Hey everybody, Salty Sorbet here. Today we're going to be talking about a game called Fall of Porcupine. It's an indie game developed by a company called Critical Rabbit, and it is a story adventure game that follows a brand new junior doctor named Finley who goes about uncovering dark secrets about the townspeople of this town that he just moved to called Porcupine. So, before we start, I do want to let you guys know that I did receive a free copy of the game in order to review it, cover it, share it with you guys, let you guys know what I thought. That being said, my opinion was not affected by the fact that I got the game for free. I was not compensated for a positive review, and all of the opinions contained herein are my own, and only mine. Now, one more thing before we start, the subject matter is really dark. And to be quite honest, it's not really a subject matter that I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy the narrative because of the deep, very dark nature of the story. Now, I knew what it was going in, but I guess I didn't think it would be quite so real. Not that I thought it was going to be humorous, but I just expected it to be a little bit more lighthearted considering the aesthetic. Until I saw this, this trigger warning. When I saw this trigger warning, like, I knew what I was getting into. But, and I do commend Critical Rabbit for giving us a trigger warning at the beginning of the game, letting people know, like, hey, you know, if you are struggling, you need to go seek help. And this game is dark, and be warned. So, essentially, the way that this review video is going to go, we're going to hit some subjects quick and move right on. We're going to talk about the story, we're going to talk about gameplay, we're going to talk about visuals, music, bugs, but we're going to hit them and we're going to move on. We're not going to dilly-dally too long. What you saw on the screen, that black screen, I thought the game crashed, like, legitimately. That was the opening cutscene. There was just a heart monitor sound, and then you see your eyeballs pop up, but I thought the game had crashed. But let's get right into it. Let's start with the story. So, for a game in this genre, the narrative needs to be strong, right? And I feel like your choices need to be impactful on that narrative. And I felt like your choices weren't impactful enough, and I felt like there was artificial padding of the story with conversations that are often way too lengthy and have very little or no narrative purpose as far as I can tell. And that being said, I do commend Fall of Porcupine again for not shying away from the realities of the medical profession. Like, this is a story that needs to be told and it needs to be heard. But I feel like they dropped the ball with the overall pacing of the story, making it very difficult to get through. Like, the introduction, yes, that's what I meant. The introduction seems like way too drawn out, and the conclusion is way too hasty. Like, you make these choices throughout the game about various things, but it's unclear more often than not if those choices actually affect relationships or outcomes. Even at the end, I'm not really sure that any of my choices would have mattered. So your participation in this game is, it's story. So, you know, you go and you talk to these NPCs, and you're walking from point A to point B, and you're pushing an occasional button to read more drawn-out conversations and play some mini-games. Right? And those conversations don't seem to matter. Like, some of them are just flat-out nonsensical as far as fitting them into the narrative. But I didn't like the story. It wasn't well done. It was too fast. It was too slow. The middle was like the almost right pacing, but you had to get there, and then once you got past it, you was like, oh, whoa, we're done? Oh, okay. So let's move on to gameplay. We've talked enough about the story. Let's move on to gameplay. It's a side-scrolling adventure story-driven game. You move this way, you move that way. Slowly. And then, once you get that way, you have to backtrack this way. Slowly. And then once you get this way, you might find out you've got to go back that way. Slowly. I don't know if you're catching the theme here. It's slow. And in a story-driven adventure game, how you interact with the world is important, and what you can do within that world is important. It creates this sense of immersion into the story. Like, the story is one thing, which we already talked about, not living up to the full potential of the story that could have been told here. But the story is one thing, but if it's just walk, talk, repeat ad nauseum, that's gonna get really boring really fast. And if that's the case, I could have just watched the movie and not had to push any buttons. So the game is, of course, mostly walking and talking, naturally. I mean, that's the genre, but I feel like they unnecessarily threw in other things to break up the ad nauseum, right? There's unnecessary platforming thrown into the games. It feels very forced and didn't really make a lot of sense on more than one occasion. And then, on the other hand, I like the idea that they had with Finley's workday. Like, they give him... You have tasks that have to be completed. Like, basically, you're doing your rounds, right? And it's a series of mini-games that need to be completed. You're scored based on how proficient you were at those mini-games, but I don't really think your score matters because your supervisor seems really just dissatisfied with you regardless of whether you do well or not, so I don't think it mattered. But I like the idea of the mechanic. What I didn't like was the mini-games themselves, or the fact that it doesn't seem to matter. But they become very, very tedious very, very quickly. Which I suppose could be what medical professionals feel like sometimes, but in video games, that's not ideal. Most minigames range from meh to downright terrible. And the instructions are sometimes unclear. I mean, like, they aren't hard to figure out once you see it in action, but if you're gonna give me instructions, at least make them correct and concise. Let's move on to the visuals and the music. We're gonna talk about them both at the same time because I said so. The visuals are absolutely gorgeous. I love the aesthetic here. That's actually what drew me to get to the game to begin with. You play as and are surrounded by anthropomorphic animals who are freaking adorable. The background environments are so beautifully crafted. I can only say good things about the visuals. And the music, I will sing nothing but praise about the music as well. The music is the perfect atmospheric addition. It fits the narrative every single step of the way. That was my compliment to the game. Now let's move back on to something I didn't like. Moving on to the controls. So walking and interacting with the world are fine. I mean, you know, you move forward, you move backward. You push the interact button, which, if I remember correctly, was F? Maybe. Jump is space. I mean, it's not abnormal. It's typical controls. But there was a particular minigame that I played on Finley's first day that really had me agitated, right? So, it's a minigame. You have to push a certain key and hold that key down, and then it pulls up two other keys. You have to hold all three of them at the same time by the end. Well, the buttons that I had to hold, and now this is a keyboard only. I didn't need to use my mouse. It's a keyboard only, so I had to hold down H in this order, then I, and then M. Do that on your keyboard with just one hand. It's not comfortable. So I was a little irritated by that particular minigame, because that's not the only weird combination I had, that's just the one that I can remember. So, the fact that there's no option to change any of your keybinds was really surprising to me, because there is a very high level of accessibility options in the game. There's a couple of larger text sizes, there's a dyslexia mode, and a color mode, and you can set the minigames to simple, which obviously probably would have taken care of that problem, but I didn't need to, so why would I do that? And you can turn on player guidance for help. So, like, they went out of their way to make the game as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, but yet you can't change the keybinds. I was really surprised by that. Sorry, I had a moment of the cat walking in front of the screen, and I could not read anything. So, like I said, accessibility options, I was very shocked that there was not a way to change the keybinds. But let's go ahead and move on. The next thing I want to talk about is bugs and glitches. Now, before I go too far into this, I do want to say that I didn't actually finish the game. I watched a video on YouTube of someone else playing the entire game because I just didn't find the game enjoyable to play, for various reasons. I played as much as I could, and I just couldn't continue anymore. So I'm going to talk about the bugs that I saw, but I'm also going to talk about bugs that other people have reported, because obviously I didn't have an opportunity to get all of these things that happened. So I didn't experience any major bugs. I did have a game crash, but I don't really know that that was the game's fault. That could have been because another program had crashed at the same time, so it could have been related to that. So I'm not going to blame the game for that one. But I did experience a couple of glitches with like the text and stuff like that. There were typos in the text, which, you know, this is not an early access game. I feel like typos should not really be a thing. But maybe that's the writer in me, minor annoyance there. But there were also some glitches, some visual glitches with the text, like the text was the wrong size, and other people actually reported that the text was, like, off the screen. Like, part of the text, anyway, was off of the screen. And also the typos, of course. There were instances that other people reported that characters will just walk off of the screen when they're not supposed to. Like, you're supposed to be talking to them, they'll just walk off the screen. They'll constantly walk into obstacles. Some people have said that their mobile phone, which is a major mechanic in the game, is unresponsive and didn't work. And others have stated that they did have game-breaking bugs that actually caused them to quit and reload. The Switch edition of the game seems to have a little bit more glitchy, buggy mess kind of going on than the PC version, but they're here. So all of that being said, would I recommend Fall of Porcupine? Honestly, no. I'm sad to say it, because like I said before, this story needs to be told, and it needs to be heard, but Fall of Porcupine just doesn't deliver. The narrative is too slow to start and too hasty at the end. The big mystery was a letdown, and the ending was anticlimactic. Critical Rabbit failed to capitalize on what could have been a great story and a great game. And I don't feel like I could in good conscience recommend the game. If you are, however, still interested in playing the game is on sale for the Steam Summer Sale until July 13th of 2023 for $16.99. It's 15% off, regular price $20. And for $20, I don't feel like this is a $20 game. I really don't. I feel like this could have been released in early access so that the dev could maybe work out a few of the bugs, a few of the kinks, and kind of flush in, kind of get that beginning narrative under control, but mostly fix the bugs that people are experiencing, which, I mean, I know patching is a thing, but it shouldn't be as big a deal. It shouldn't be as big a thing as it is. You shouldn't have games that release with bugs and then you have to patch them. But that's a rant for another day. Fall of Porcupine, it's cute. Visually, it's cute. The subject matter is very, very dark here and not something that I really enjoyed. And like I said, in good conscience, I can't recommend the game. It's missing something. It's missing that, like, that chutzpah. I don't know. It's missing something. And the story could have been so much more even. If the story were more even, it would be a lot more interesting. But either way, that's how I feel about Fall of Porcupine. I'm sorry to say it, but I did not enjoy the game. And if you found this video helpful, please make sure you hit that like button, because it really does help out the channel a lot. Lets YouTube know that I'm not just talking to myself, even though I probably am, but that's okay. That's for me to know and them not to. And if you want to see more content like this, more first impressions, small game reviews, Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you always know when we post a new video. And also, I do stream on both Twitch and YouTube. Typical schedule will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday evening, sorry, from 8:30 Central Time to whenever I can't go anymore. We typically stream for about 8 to 10 hours a night. And if you want to check that out, Twitch link will be in the description. And of course, we stream on YouTube too because we're awesome and we like YouTube. Typically, we stream Guild Wars 2, Guild Wars 1, and we have a variety night. So if you're interested, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. I very much appreciate all of you guys. I do hope that everyone has a great day, afternoon, evening, whatever it happens to be for you. I hope you have a good one, and I do hope to see you guys in the next video.